It begins with the smallest, most innocent of sounds, a baby's cry. But this cry isn't heard in a warm nursery. It's coming from the cold, damp grass of a stranger's yard in rural Tennessee. The infant, impossibly small, is alone. A life just beginning, found abandoned at the start of a nightmare. Because just miles away, the reason for this abandonment lies in a house steeped in silence and blood. 4 bodies. A mother, a father, a grandmother, and an uncle. An entire family erased. The man at the center of this storm is Austin Robert Drummond, a 28-year-old with a rap sheet as long as his arm, a man already on bail for attempted murder inside a prison. Yet in a call from behind bars, this same man, accused of wiping out a generation, would utter a sentence that defies all logic. They were like family to me. How does a man go from family to alleged executioner? This case isn't just about the brutal act of murder. It's a story that forces us to confront the chilling contradictions of a killer's heart and a justice system that may have let a monster walk free one last time. Welcome to Unveiling the Crime. Join us as we unravel the story of Austin Drummond. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the human stories behind the headlines. Every life is a story of branching paths, of moments where a single choice can define a future. For Austin Drummond, the path to a normal life, a career, a family, a quiet existence, seemed to vanish long before the events of July 2025. He wasn't born a monster. He was forged into one by a series of choices and circumstances that sent him spiraling down a violent trajectory. The first significant break came in 2013. At an age when most are building their futures, Drummond was handed a 10-year sentence for armed robbery. The clang of that prison door marked the end of his youth and the beginning of his education in a much harsher world. A decade erased. But prison for some is not a place of rehabilitation. It is an incubator, a place where dormant violence is sharpened into a weapon. Drummond's time inside wasn't spent reflecting or reforming. It was spent descending deeper into the abyss. The proof came with a new charge, one earned while already incarcerated: attempted first-degree murder. He had, allegedly, tried to kill within the very walls meant to contain him. This wasn't just a crack in his character. It was a complete shattering. He had graduated from theft to attempted murder, demonstrating the chilling evolution. And here lies the most terrifying part of the setup: the decision that sealed the fate of 4 innocent people. In December 2024, despite this history, despite being charged with trying to kill someone inside a maximum security facility, the justice system deemed Austin Robert Drummond eligible for bail. He walked out of prison, a man steeped in violence, back onto the streets. A system designed to protect the public had just armed a ticking time bomb and pointed it directly at the heart of an unsuspecting family. The confrontation did not begin with a gunshot, but with a cry. The discovery of the abandoned infant on July 29, 2025, was the first thread pulled, unraveling a tapestry of unimaginable horror. This tiny life, left in a stranger's care, was not an act of mercy. It was an anchor, a piece of evidence left behind by a man allegedly fleeing a scene of utter devastation. That infant was the key, and when authorities followed the trail back to a quiet home in Tiptonville, they found the lock it belonged to. The silence inside was absolute, a stark contrast to the violence that had preceded it. Inside, the scene was a testament to a singular, brutal rage. 4 lives extinguished. Adriana Williams, just 20, and James Wilson, 21, the parents of the abandoned child, their futures stolen. Courtney Rose, 38, the grandmother, and young Braden Williams, Only 15, the uncle. A family tree severed at the root. As the identities were confirmed, the single most chilling detail emerged. Austin Drummond, the prime suspect, was no stranger. He was known to them. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was personal, intimate, and for that reason infinitely more terrifying. With a suspect identified, one of the largest manhunts in recent Tennessee history exploded into action. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation placed Drummond on its most wanted list, plastering his face across the state. He was considered armed, dangerous, and desperate. For days he was a ghost, a phantom moving through the backwoods and forgotten towns of West Tennessee. A dragnet involving local, state, and federal officers tightened around the region. Every tip investigated, every shadow questioned. The search stretched on, a week of fear and uncertainty gripping the community. The end came not with a bang, but with a whisper. A tip from a vigilant citizen led authorities to a derelict abandoned building in Jackson. There, cornered and with nowhere left to run, the hunt for Austin Drummond concluded. The man who had evaded a massive law enforcement effort was found hiding, his brief, violent freedom over. The wildness of the chase was then replaced by the cold, hard geometry of a courtroom. Stripped of his freedom, Drummond stood before a judge, the weight of his alleged actions read aloud. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of aggravated kidnapping, 4 counts of being a felon in possession of a firearm. Each charge was a headstone for a life lost. The prosecution made its intentions clear from the outset. They would seek the death penalty. This was not a case for compromise or leniency. It was a case for the ultimate price. As the charges were read, Drummond's plea echoed in the silent courtroom. Not guilty. And as the investigation deepened, it became clear he hadn't acted entirely alone in his escape, with several accomplices later charged for aiding his flight. A small network of shadows that allowed a killer to remain free for a few more desperate days. The trial of Austin Robert Drummond was not a lengthy, drawn-out affair. The evidence against him was a mountain, his defense a whisper in a hurricane. He and his lawyers presented a wild, almost unbelievable narrative that he was a confidential informant, that his cover was blown, and that the family was caught in the crossfire of a conspiracy far larger than himself. It was a story designed to create doubt, but it was shattered by one simple, undeniable fact: the abandoned child, a living link between him and the 4 people he claimed were his family. The jury's verdict was swift and absolute, guilty on all counts. And the sentence that followed was the only one the prosecution had ever considered: death. The world of Austin Drummond shrank from the open roads of Tennessee to a concrete box measuring 6 feet by 9. This is the reality of death row. It is not a place of dramatic confrontations, but of slow, crushing monotony. Days bleed into weeks, weeks into years, all measured by the slow march of legal appeals. He was no longer a name on the most wanted list. He was a number in the system, another soul in a long, quiet line, waiting for the machinery of justice to complete its final turn. For years he clung to his narrative, repeating the informant's story to anyone who would listen, a mantra of denial against the deafening silence of his guilt. Then the final appeal was denied. The last legal avenue was closed. A date was set. In those final hours, the weight of a lifetime's choices comes crashing down. There is no more posturing, no more performance for a jury. There is only the man and the truth. His request for a last meal was simple, almost childlike, a stark contrast to the complexity of his crimes. He did not ask for a feast, but for the kind of simple comfort food that speaks of a life that could have been. As he was led to the execution chamber, the protocol is one of quiet dignity. But for the condemned, it is a walk through the ruins of their own life. Every step is a memory, every silence a regret. When asked if he had any final words, he stood, facing the witnesses behind the glass, the faceless representatives of the society he had wronged. His voice, when it came, was not a scream of defiance or a whisper of remorse. It was calm, steady, and utterly chilling. He did not confess. He did not apologize. He simply offered one final, baffling piece of his distorted reality, a statement that would hang in the air long after he was gone. His final words were not a confession. They were not a plea for forgiveness. As he stood at the precipice of eternity, Austin Drummond said, "I'm sorry they were there. It was never about them. It was always about me. They were just in the way." In that single statement, the entire horrifying legacy of his life is crystallized. It is not an apology. It is a final narcissistic deflection. Even in death, he casts himself as the protagonist of the tragedy, and the 4 people he slaughtered as mere collateral damage in his story. This is the legacy of the man, a void of empathy so profound that even his final regret was selfish. But Drummond's personal legacy is only one part of the story. The other, more troubling legacy is the one left upon the justice system itself. It is a legacy of failure, punctuated by a single, catastrophic question. How? How does a man with a decade-long violent felony record, a man who was then charged with attempting to murder someone while incarcerated, get granted bail? This was not a flaw in the system. It was a chasm. The decision to release him was not a calculated risk. It was a gamble with human lives. And the House lost everything. The case of Austin Drummond serves as a terrifying monument to the potential consequences of a system that prioritizes the rights of a violent offender over the safety of the community. It forces us to ask how we weigh freedom against security, and what must change to prevent another Austin Drummond from walking out of a jail cell and into a family's home. And finally, there is the most fragile and important legacy of all, the child. The infant, found keying in a yard, who started this whole story. That child is now a living orphan, a sapling growing from scorched earth. They will grow up without a mother, a father, a grandmother, or an uncle. They will carry a history they did not choose, a backstory of unimaginable violence. Their life is the enduring consequence, the human cost of every one of Drummond's choices and every one of the system's failures. Their future, a blank page waiting to be written, is the one flickering light in the immense darkness of this case. They are the final silent witness, and their life story will be the ultimate testament to the legacy of this crime. The story of Austin Robert Drummond ends here, but the questions it raises are timeless. We are left to grapple with the uncomfortable realities of human nature and the fallibility of the systems we build to protect ourselves. We are not here to give you easy answers, because there are none. Instead, we leave you with the questions that will linger long after the screen goes dark. Where should the line be drawn between an individual's right to bail and the public's right to safety? Was Drummond's final statement a moment of twisted honesty, or the last lie of a master manipulator? And what does justice truly mean for the surviving child, who must navigate a world shaped by a loss they can never fully comprehend? These are not just questions about a single case. They are questions about who we are as a society, about justice, mercy, and the darkness that can reside within the human heart. We encourage you to discuss these ideas respectfully and thoughtfully in the comments below. What part of this story will stay with you? If this case gave you pause and made you think, please consider sharing this video with someone who appreciates deep storytelling. And for more stories that explore the profound questions behind the world's most complex crimes, make sure you subscribe to Final Words. Thank you for watching.